Welcome to another interesting topic from the Bible. Well, welcome back to another one of our Bible Detectives series lessons. And today we're going to be locking down the time period between the great flood of Noah's time and Abraham going into the land of Canaan. In a previous lesson we went through this investigation and we learned that the flood came 1,656 years after the creation of Adam, after the day of creation, and it's alleged from different people's notes that um, Terah died in 2083. That's 2083 years after the creation. And we're going to go through and see, is that true? Can we figure that out? Is that the correct number? Our investigation is going to have to do some arithmetic here to figure things out. So um, it is also alleged that Abraham entered into Canaan the same year that his father died. And is that true as well? Can we prove this to be a fact? If we had to go to court, can we prove it to be so? So most dates determined in the book of Genesis and uh, Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. Those are the two chapters we use extensively to set the chronology. It's very, very exact numbers there. I'm impressed with it when I go through here. It took me years to get into this, but once I get into the numbers and applied some of my accounting skills um, to the scripture, it was amazing how precise scripture is when it comes to the numbers in the chronologies in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. And this formula is so and so lived so many years and had a son or begat a son. And then we can start doing the calculations there. So if Adam was born, year zero, he lived 130 years and begat Seth. Now we know Seth was born is at year 130, and then you could take the year that he had a son to his first and add that to it, and we start getting building our chronology of the Old Testament. And it's usually written that way, that Adam had lived so many years and had a son, and then Seth lived so many years and had a son. We have two problematic passages, though, that confuse our little formula here. And the first one is in Genesis 5, 32. And I think I will let our background sound read this for me.
And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Okay, I always say that as Japheth. My computer doesn't speak the same language I do sometimes. But so unless these three were triplets, though, we have a problem here. And they're not triplets. Scripture investigation, to my point, say that clearly not. So Shem is of the godly line. He is the line to the Messiah. So he is the key, and he's listed first. But was he the firstborn? And the scripture, I think, will show us that he is not. So what year can we figure out he was born? We go to Genesis chapter 11 in our other chronological chapter. In verse 10, it tells us something that's really key to understanding this. And again, let's try having the machine read this for us.
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood.
Okay, so it's 2 years after the flood, after the great flood. We know the flood was 1,656 years after creation. So we add 2 to that. Now we're 1,658 years after creation. And that was the year, at that time, we also see that Shem was 100 years old from this statement as well. So we can start using this to build our chronology and also calculate that he was not the firstborn. 1658 minus 100 is 1558. That was the year Shem was born. Noah was born in 1056, and Noah's first child was aged 500. So that would give us that his first child came in 1,556 years after creation, and is not the years we see here that Shem was born in not born till 1558 years after creation. So he was not the firstborn. But Genesis 11:10 explains it to us and breaks and gives us the number that we can work with the chronology. So Shem was born in 1558, so not the firstborn, and his first son. We see the first son of Shem. Now that we have established that Shem, in fact, was of the godland, and we know the year of when he had his first child, we can continue building our chronology. And his first son is Ephaxad. And I'm going to scroll up and look at the chart here. We can come back to this in a second here. The chart will show us this godly line. And you can go through Genesis 11 and go right to all through the children, and the formula that we've worked through Genesis 5 works quite the same in Genesis 11, and you can work all the way down to Terah. So Terah is our next problem in our calculation here, and let's take a look at Genesis chapter 11, verse 26, where it says, "And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran." Again, we get the same issue as we get in Genesis chapter 5, verse 32. We see that there's 3 children listed here in one verse, and there is no specific time given of their order of birth or which one is the first or the second or third child. Abraham is listed first, just as Shem was listed first. And this indicates that they are of the messianic line, and not necessarily that it indicates chronology. We saw that in Genesis chapter 5, that was not the case. So moving on here, we see that Shem was not the first, and we'll see that Abraham was probably not as well. So we have to do a little more detective work, and let's put on detective hats and look at some actual facts, get them down on paper, and then we can start putting this together with facts. Now, we know that Abraham was 75 years old when he went into Canaan. We get that clearly from Genesis chapter 12, verse 4. We also know that Terah died at age 205, and that is clearly stated in Genesis 11:32. Now, interestingly, you can go to the book of Acts in chapter 7 of verse 4, where Stephen was given his defense before the Sanhedrin, and he shows that Terah's passing and Abraham going into Canaan land were in fact the same year. So now we can do a little arithmetic here. We know that Terah died at 205 years old, and we can subtract from that. We can subtract 75 years old that Abraham was when he went into Canaan land, or he was listed there as Abram at the time. We get the number of 130. So Terah was age 130 when Abram was born. Now it says earlier that that was not the year of his first child. But scroll back up here, it says Terah lived 70 years and begat. So we have a gap in years here of time. We have some time that shows that Abraham was not the first child. So we did our arithmetic, and let's move on here. Now, we go from our calculations earlier, we realized, and from the chart that we put together, and you can go through and figure this yourself if you need to, Terah was born 1,878 years after creation. Now, if Terah was age 130 when Abram was born, that would have been 2008 years after the creation. And this would have been the same year that we can put for Abram's birth date. Now, Terah's first child was at age 70. I have 75 written here, but I think it's at age 70 up in the verse there. And so Abram was not the first child from our calculations. If Abraham was in fact born at the same year that Terah died, then Abram would have had to have been born when Terah was 130 years old. So Abram was born in 2000 8 years after the creation. And we can use that number to figure the year that Abram went into Canaan land, because Genesis 12:4 gives us that nice number of 75. And so we add 75 to 2008, and we get to 2083, which is the year that he entered the Canaan land after the date of creation. So, creation to the flood was 1,656 years. We've established that in an earlier video. From the flood to Abraham, we can calculate that by taking the year he went to Canaan, which was just calculated 2,083 years after creation, subtract the years of the flood, which is 1,656 years, and we can see that Abraham went into Canaan land in 427 years after the great flood. So here we have a very interesting study using numbers of Scripture to come up with prove ages and build it. You can actually go through and build this chart if you like, and put these things together. It's just an interesting study. It's probably a little bit over some people's head with the numbers if people don't really like to get into numbers. But Scripture is very specific. And to me, it just proves the inspiration of Scripture. The very words of Scripture inspired. You go through and study these numbers, you realize that it's just not an estimate. God was very specific in what he wrote. I find that the real encouragement, and it helps me better trust God's revelation to us. So thank you for listening into our lesson here today. I hope you got something out of it. Share it with others, and other people can get in and listen to these lessons. And thank you for coming to this study.